Turning points change the course of our lives, whether it's a big decision, overcoming an obstacle or tragedy, or taking a leap of faith. These stories of inspiration and resilience are what Turning Point is all about. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Turning Point. I'm your host, Priya, and I'm very excited to have Jodie Pappas as our guest today. Jodie is the founder of the skincare brand Clean Kiss. It is made here in Canada, and it focuses on using natural ingredients. We're going to talk more about how the brand came to be, and of course, we'll hear about Jodie's Turning Point as well. Welcome to Turning Point, Jodie.
Thank you, Priya. I'm so happy to be here.
It's great to have you, especially because there's so much excitement about your skincare right now and also your passion for pro-aging. We're going to talk more about that and exactly what it means, but we're actually going back in time to your 20s for your turning point. So at that time, you were diagnosed with Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. Can you take us back to that time and tell us what led to that diagnosis?
Sure thing. So I was a newlywed. So my husband and I had only just been married for a couple of years, and we decided that it was time for us to start a family. He's almost 6 years older than me. So I was in my late 20s, and as most 20-year-olds do, they believe that they are healthy and strong and that there's, no health issues, especially if you're not presenting with any signs or symptoms. So I didn't even know that I had PCOS, which is what it's referred to as, until I tried to conceive. And so it was at that time where, after years of being on birth control, which, in hindsight, I, as a mother now to teenage daughters, I know better. And I know, the effects that can have on your developing body. But back then I didn't know what I didn't know. Right. So when the doctor tells you to, take something such as birth control, I did exactly what I was told. And so when it came time to actually conceive, it was virtually impossible for my body to conceive my children at the time because I had PCOS. And what we now know about PCOS is very different from what was known all those years ago. So back then, basically the doctor just said, well, you've got PCOS. And I remember saying, well, what does that mean? He said, well, you're never going to ovulate on your own. Not very encouraging. You're never going to ovulate on your own. So we're just going to, put you on fertility drugs, and that will, help things along. And even back then, my gut instinct was telling me that there was more to the story. But of course, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have a lot of resources available. But what I did have was a very smart best friend who said to me, go out and pick up this book called Overcoming Infertility Naturally. And I couldn't tell you who the author is, and I've actually tried to go back and find the author because of how life-changing that was to me. But suffice it to say that I did go on fertility treatment as I had been advised, but I also sought out natural treatments because I didn't like the idea of just coming off birth control and then going right on to fertility treatment. I wanted to see what is it inside my body that's creating an unhealthy environment for me to be able to ovulate and to conceive children on my own. And so what I do remember that this book had taken me through were all of the essential vitamins and nutrients and minerals that our body needs in order for our body to be a fertile environment to be able to conceive. And so I really did those two things in parallel in terms of looking at alternative medicine and then looking at, traditional Western medicine. And that is what I attribute, my success to, that ability to be able to look at what is the root cause of this rather than just putting a Band-Aid solution on my diagnosis of PCOS.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've heard stories of people receiving these diagnoses and, or dealing with infertility in general. And I know it can be very stressful, both physically and emotionally. It can put a lot of strain on relationships as well. How did that impact your life?
It was purely awful to be really frank. And you're right. It does put an emotional strain and stress, and definitely stress on any relationship. But as newlyweds, it was hard. It was stressful, and it's easy to garner a lot of resentment towards your own body, thinking, but this is not what life planned for me. I'm a young woman. And quite frankly, I think this is probably true of any woman at any age, where we believe that our bodies are fertile and healthy and able to do the things that we want them to do. And then when life throws us that curveball, it's very easy to garner that resentment. And also towards my husband at the time, because who was it that had to go sit in the fertility office every morning at 7 a.m. to go through all the blood work and all the internal ultrasounds and everything else that goes along with fertility treatment, and including the drugs that they put you on, which can make your hormones like a roller coaster. So it's really not a fun time. Having said that, I am definitely one of the lucky women that was able to conceive. And so my heart really goes out even more so to those women that do all of this treatment and go through it for years upon years, and then are still, at the same, basically crossroads where they can't, even after trying everything. So I do consider myself to be very blessed and fortunate that it did turn out to be, a happy and successful ending for me. And one thing I want to share is that what I realized was that so much of what I was able to do in my body, I was able to control through what I attribute to those natural means and mechanisms that I was able to turn to. But I also realized that I may have been in a different situation than so many women, where no matter what they try, they still can't, get to that point and overcome that hurdle. It's such a complex thing. I don't wish it upon anybody. If children is what you want, then, I wish everybody could have the abundance to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. You have 3 children now. So was that? Yeah. What was that moment like when you found out you were pregnant for the first time?
Well, so when you're on fertility drugs, they do actually tell you that you have a high chance of having multiples. And so I conceived my first child, my daughter, and she was a singleton. And I hadn't even heard that term singleton before, which was interesting. And so I was so thrilled and over the top excited. And of course, when they tell you that you've got, I believe back then they said it was a 30% chance of conceiving multiples. I didn't believe that I was actually going to have multiples. When I had to go through fertility even a second time, a few years later, I didn't know if I was going to be successful. And then once I found out that I was successful, I still did not believe that I would conceive multiples. And actually, shockingly, with my second pregnancy, I actually was pregnant with triplets. And unfortunately, one of them was not viable. But I was blessed with twins. And so it was an incredible experience to get that news that I was blessed with multiples. I was in shock. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Even though there's a 30% chance, you still don't think you're going to be one of them. And it's been such a fun journey. And, so my eldest is now 20 and my twins are 17. And it's been a really fun journey, not without its challenges, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is really incredible though. I mean, after, you talked about the challenges and the stress and the pressure of going through those fertility treatments and dealing with the diagnosis of PCOS. So, just amazing to hear that you had 3 children after, I can't believe your oldest is 20. Wow.
Yes.
That must be hard to believe, I'm sure, even for you sometimes.
She's actually almost 21. So in a month, and maybe by the time this airs, she'll actually have had her 21st birthday. So yes, it's amazing because I still feel like I'm in my 20s. I still feel like I'm back in time to where I was back then, just a lot wiser than I was.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Young at heart, right?
Yes. Young at heart.
That second pregnancy that you mentioned when you were pregnant with your twins, this was really another turning point for you because you did find out that one of them had a rare genetic condition. So what can you tell us about that?
Yes, it was definitely a blow when we were given this diagnosis, and the doctors pretty much told us this as soon as the twins were born. And it came as a shock to us, even though I had been on bed rest and they were quite concerned about me and about the baby's, survival during the pregnancy. One of my twins had been diagnosed as failing to thrive. And so that meant she was very low birth weight, and they weren't actually sure that they were going to be able to, sustain her until delivery. So I was elated to actually make it to 35 weeks, which was basically considered full term for a multiple birth. And at that time, so we delivered these babies by C-section, and within the next 24 hours, they were able to tell us that there was something going on with my one daughter, Maya. She was born with a rare genetic condition which affects 1 in 16,000 babies. And so right away, they told us that they were going to put us in the care of the great doctors at Toronto's Sick Kids Hospital, and that she would require reconstructive skull surgery in order to, basically what they had to do was she was born, instead of having 4 plates in her skull that joined together by the soft spot, she was actually born with premature fusing of the side plates in her skull. So it's got a very long name. It's called bicoronal craniosynostosis. And so we were under the guidance of a fantastic medical team at Sick Kids, and they were able to basically walk us through every step of the process. But it was a really scary time. Nobody wants to, of course, go through any sort of challenges, both during a pregnancy or with a child, at any age. So whether it be an infant or an older child, it was just such a scary time, Priya. I can't even tell you what that was like as a parent. Especially when it's a time that you're supposed to be overjoyed with the birth of your children. And we were, don't get me wrong, but we were overshadowed with this stress and this sadness about what our daughter was going to have to go through with having her entire skull reconstructed from her eyebrow bone all the way back to the back of her head. I'm happy to say it was a success. You would look at her and you would never know that she's been through this ordeal. Thank God, I thank the doctors. I thank everyone for what they were able to do for her. And, I do still believe though that everything in some way works out how it was meant to, so I don't, and I never back then ever felt resentment or anger towards what we were going through, especially when you're in an environment like Sick Kids and you see so many children and so many families that are affected in so many ways. It really does help you to gain perspective on what your situation is and how you can deal with it going forward.
I can only imagine. I mean, we talked about this long journey you already had with fertility. And then, of course, the excitement of finding out that you're pregnant. And then, like you said, to then immediately sort of have this stress. I'm so happy to hear that she is thriving and doing well today. And it sounds like this period of time also was a big change in what you were prioritizing. I mean, whether by choice or not, but you were an executive working in downtown Toronto at the time. And then one day you go in and you're told you have to be on bed rest. So what do you remember about that?
I remember thinking that nothing else in the world mattered. And I remember thinking so distinctly how quickly you can get that news, get that call, get that diagnosis. And it doesn't matter what your title is, what your position is, what your status is. The only thing that mattered to me at that point in time was growing healthy babies, making sure that I did the best job I possibly could in just making sure that I was doing everything right by them. And that was it. And, basically my job was to lay on the couch and eat ice cream. And I was told to not even do laundry, which I really enjoyed at the time. So, it gives you new perspective, right? You just realize nothing else in life matters when something like that happens to you.
When I was reading your bio and you talk about this period of time, I kind of got from it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that this also really fueled your desire to help other families. And one of the steps you took in order to do this was creating a book called Your Family Health Organizer. So how did that come to be during this time?
Oh, it was a moment of insanity, quite frankly, which turned out to be such a beautiful gift. So what happened was, as you could imagine, the process of, having 3 young children under the age of 3.5, which was now what I had in my home. My husband was a working professional, and I'm now a former career woman, now at home on maternity leave, feeling like I still needed to, not only be a mom, but also, stay really organized with all of this medical information that we were being thrown our way because of all of the appointments that we had for Maya. So we were at Sick Kids Hospital meeting with teams of doctors on a weekly basis leading up to her surgery. And one of the things that I quickly realized was, and I thank my corporate days and my corporate training for this, because I actually believe it was great. It was a great experience for me to learn how to stay organized as a young mom. And so what I did was, my husband came home from work one day, and I had been doing research about finding some sort of organizational tool to keep all of our medical information straight. And every appointment we went to, we were asked information about our medical history, especially because they're trying to determine if there's genetic traits and genetic things going on with both my husband and I that would have indicated that our daughter was going to be born with this genetic condition. So we were going for genetic testing and, all sorts of test after test. And just keeping it all straight was overwhelming. So my husband came home from work one day and I said, I've come up with an idea. While I'm on mat leave, I'm going to create this organizational book for parents in order to keep track of their medical information. And so he knows my wild tendencies, and he knows that when I say I'm going to do something like that there's a good chance I'm actually going to do it. So he said, that's great. That's a great project. You go for it. Like, you have my full support. But little did he know that from the moment I said that to about 18 months later, I had actually self-published this book and was working with a pediatrician to gather, a lot of the research and information that went into the book. And I actually had the book out on bookshelves 18 months later. And it's an organization book. So I wish I had a copy to actually show you, but it was a binder style. And basically so that parents can fill out information of their own health history and also put information in there about each of their children. When you go to medical appointments, I believe one of the most important things that you need to do as an individual, as well as a parent, is you need to go and be your own best advocate. And you need to be asking questions. You need to be making sure you're getting the answers that you are looking for. And if you don't, then you keep asking the question in a different way, or ask it of a different doctor or different professional. And that was my goal when writing that book. Was not only was it designed to help parents stay organized, but it was also to help them to advocate for their children, or to advocate for their own, medical treatment when they went to see a doctor. So it was a fun project that turned into, kind of my first foray into being an entrepreneur.
Fanshawe College's continuing education programs are one reason the college is a leader in part-time adult education. These programs are designed to upgrade your skills and enhance your career. All of the courses are part-time, and most are delivered asynchronously online. Whether you're an entrepreneur looking to gain a new skill, someone getting ready to re-enter the workforce, or a professional looking to learn something completely new, Fanshawe really has something for everyone. Registration for winter courses is now open. Yes, and I think that for those of us who are hearing your story for the first time, it also gives us some insight into who you are as a person, somebody who, when a challenge comes along, sees it, takes it, learns from it, and then really tries to take those learnings and help other people. And I feel like this is a theme that I'm just seeing in your story, and it's going to continue as we start to talk about Clean Kiss as well. But before we get there, let's pause in 2019, because this was another turning point for you. And in your own words, you say that you came to this realization that you had taken the wellness diet too far. So what led to that realization?
Oh gosh, it was a long time coming, Priya, but I didn't want to see the signs. So after all of these events happened in my early years with my infertility due to my polycystic ovarian syndrome, my daughter's medical diagnosis, and just that journey from that point forward, while I mentioned earlier that it was really important to me to look to alternative natural medicine and to really draw upon, other avenues in order to keep myself and my family healthy, I also, it didn't stop there. I kept searching, and I kept following every health trend, every wellness fad, everything that was basically, being put out there by the media. I was definitely that type of woman that would constantly be searching out, ways to be healthier. And I don't think that that's a bad thing in and of itself. I really applaud people that are taking ownership for their health and are advocating for their health. I think that's super, super important. So I don't want anybody to misunderstand my intention. But there are certain types of people, and there are certain personalities, I believe, that can fall prey to too much of this. It's too much of a good thing type of thing. So you can fall prey to getting completely absorbed and obsessed with trying to be too healthy. And there's actually a name for this, and it's called orthorexia. Orthorexia is a diagnosis for an eating disorder that is, that literally means somebody that is obsessed with wellness and with their health. And for me, how that manifested was through the way I ate through the way I interacted in the world, so certain elements of germophobia, certain elements of, being extremely neurotic about what went on my body, what went in my body, where I would go, the places I would be, who I would be, who and what I would be exposed to. It never got to the point where I would restrict my social outings, but it could have. So, for example, before I would go to a restaurant, I couldn't go to that restaurant without looking up the menu, knowing exactly what it was I was going to eat before I went. I would have to know exactly what was going into my food before I would, feel comfortable putting it into my body. So I went from somebody in my 20s who had no problem going to McDonald's or, eating a piece of pizza just because it looked delicious, to somebody that was so restrictive that everybody in my social circle knew, well, Jodie's never going to eat that. Well, Jodie's not going to touch that. And I started noticing we were getting fewer dinner invitations. We were getting fewer invites to go to certain events. And people just knew, if we were out for a birthday celebration and they were cutting up the cake, they wouldn't even offer it to me anymore because they knew that I was always going to be saying no. And it wasn't until I realized the impact it was having on my daughters. And when I started to hear them say, well, Mom, you don't eat that. And, well, Mom doesn't eat that, so it mustn't be good for us. And then I started realizing what I was doing in my own home. Never mind what I was doing in my broader social circle, where I think I was giving the impression that I felt judgmental about how others were living their lives, because that's definitely the way other people feel when they're around somebody with what I was dealing with, but also just in my own home, what I was doing to my own children. And I started to worry about that. So that's really how it kind of came to a head. And then my best friend actually made a comment to me. At the time I was doing the keto diet. I was absolutely starving. I was absolutely miserable. My body was dying without having proper carbohydrates, to fuel my body and to give me energy. And she finally she had to have that frank talk with me where she just said, you do realize that you need to get some help. And it wasn't until she said that, at first, that's something that you don't want to hear, and you can get very defensive, and I think I did. If I remember correctly, I was like, well, it's fine. I'm only doing this for a short time. I'm not going to be doing this for much longer. And she said, Jodie, you're always doing something. You're always on some quest or some mission to be the healthiest version of yourself. And when are you actually going to just realize that you are actually creating more of a problem for yourself than you are doing good for yourself? So that was a huge wake-up call.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think, we're lucky to have friends like that who can say those things to us, even if it's not what we want to hear. So,
right.
So where did that lead you then, after that, once you were kind of able to acknowledge that this was something you wanted to change?
Well, it wasn't an overnight fix, that's for sure. I would say that, for anybody that's struggling with something that sounds remotely similar to this, including my own experience, it's definitely a process, and I'm still on the journey. And quite frankly, I'm not sure that I'm ever going to be 100% cured of this tendency. But I believe that the magic comes when you're able to have that self-awareness and that self-compassion, to be able to say, you are human, you deserve to have pleasure. Everything in life is meant to be pleasurable. And I was turning everything into a pain point. I was turning everything into something that made me feel guilty. And, just to share with you, there was one night, my husband and I, we love food. And so I'm a self-professed foodie, but I didn't realize that my food rules were stunting my ability to be a true foodie in the true sense of the word, where you can just, enjoy everything that, in the culinary world. And there's one night in particular that I remember. We were out for dinner. We had dessert after we had dinner, and I came home. We went to sleep, and I laid awake in bed the entire night crying in shame and guilt and agony over my decision to eat dessert. Like, really, I had to give my head a shake. But even when, to me, that was my low point, my lowest point for sure. And even after that, it required months and months of therapy for me to talk it through with a professional, where she was really able to help me understand the difference between trying to be a perfectionist and just trying to be a human and trying to be a woman who accepts herself exactly as she is. And, again, as I mentioned, it's now I'm at a point where I realize that everything in life is meant to be pleasurable. Absolutely everything. And when you get to that point of perfectionism and you push things too far, and in my case, I pushed that wellness diet too far to the point of misery, it really took a lot of reining back in to realize it. And now I can have dessert. I can celebrate life. I don't need to, eat dessert and then go exercise it away. I don't need to, look anything up. I haven't been on a scale in years. I haven't, I use my clothing as a guide. I eat intuitively. I'm able to look at something and truly judge whether that is something my body is asking for at this moment in time or not. And it's been a remarkable recovery. One of the biggest things that really got me over the hump was when my therapist actually said to me something along the lines that, Jodie, you are trying so hard to control your physical being, your whole external appearance and your whole physical being. And this goes along with the whole aging process and the aging struggle too, by the way. So when I'm speaking about this, it's not only body image, but it's also just the whole aging process that so many women, in fact, 91% of women struggle with the aging process. And it was when my therapist actually said to me that, I'm striving for this ultimate, pinnacle of health from a physical standpoint, but I'm doing it all at the detriment of my mental health. And it was when she said that I remember looking at her saying, can you please repeat that? And she said it again. And I walked away and I went, oh my gosh, how on earth, as somebody that studies and, cares so much and has what I believed at the time to have so much self-awareness, how did I miss that critical point of this mind-body connection? It was brilliant.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I can feel that aha moment just in hearing you reshare that. And, you mentioned a couple of things there, like the self-compassion side of things. And I think that, that's a good reminder. I think we can all use that reminder to have a little bit more compassion for ourselves and to, not get hung up on some of those choices that we make that in the moment can seem like such a big thing. But in the grand scheme of things, we really do need to be kinder to ourselves.
We do.
Yeah, that really stuck out to me. And you also mentioned that really this learning really has been part of your development of this pro-aging messaging that we're also seeing around Clean Kiss. So let's talk about the pro-aging side of your journey, because you mentioned to me that one of your favorite quotes was, I'm going to read it here, you can't hate yourself into creating a body you will love. And this was something I read a couple of times and I thought, yeah, this is resonating with me. So tell me more about that.
Well, and it again, it goes back to that aha moment that I had with the help of my wonderful therapist, and also the journey that I was on. And I can't take credit for that quote. So I read it in a book that I was reading recently by Una Duncan, who is a Toronto-based author. I read it in her book, and it really hit home with me, because I thought, that's it. That's what so many women are trying to do. So, and that's exactly what fuels us as women primarily, but I don't want to say it's just a female issue, because I know a lot of men that also struggle with this as well. But being a woman, of course, I can speak from a female perspective, that we believe that if we feel that guilt and that shame, and we talk to ourselves as though we wouldn't, in a manner that we wouldn't speak to anybody else. Right? So when we look in the mirror, from a Proaging standpoint, when we look in the mirror and we see wrinkles, or we see silver hair growing in, or we see on our body cellulite or rolls or lumps or bumps or something sagging, especially if you're of a perfectionist mindset, you feel that you've done something wrong, and you feel that you can do better. You need to do more. You need to do something different because what you're doing isn't working. And I want women to understand that that is a mindset that I believe in large part has come from societal messages, that unfortunately as women, we are told that we need to look a certain way, and that once you hit a certain age, that your value in society is diminished. And I believe that that's a mindset that we need to start changing. So going from having that anti-aging mindset, that where we're searching for that youth potion and we're searching for that answer on how we turn back the clock, I would actually challenge women to say, what if you actually adopted a new mindset where you embrace your age, you embrace who you are, you own who you are. You're not afraid to hide behind your age and your wisdom that you've acquired at this age and stage in your life. And yes, your body is going to change. Yes, your skin is going to change. Your hair is going to change. It's all going to change. But that is part of the beauty of life. And in so many cultures, age is revered. Age is, it's such a beautiful thing, right? Like I can think of so many cultures where your elders those are the wise ones. Those are the ones that we all want to be with and to learn from. But in North American culture, age becomes a diminishing factor, right? And I want to change that.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's such a different perspective here in North America than we see in a lot of other cultures. Yeah, and this is one of the things that really drew me to your skincare brand, Clean Kiss, as well. So we talked about your first foray into entrepreneurship in the book that you wrote. So this is your most recent foray, Clean Kiss, your skincare line. How did it come to be?
Well, I believe in following your dharma. And so dharma, for those that aren't familiar, it's a Sanskrit word for finding your purpose in life. And Priya, I believe that this is finally me finding my dharma and finding my purpose in life. And that the journey that I've been on, I believe, has all been leading me towards this opportunity. And it's been, I've been given signs and I've been getting more and more clarity as I've been approaching this point in my life. And I don't know if it's the fact that I'm about to turn 50. And to me, I'm celebrating that. I'm rejoicing in that. But to answer your question specifically about how Clean Kiss came to be, I began just exploring and just having fun. You know, like I mentioned, I'm a self-proclaimed foodie. And, you know, back at the time when I started, you know, seeing if I could just have fun coming up with formulations of my own in the natural skincare world. So I, you know, became a bit of a DIYer, which then made me realize, you know, I think I might be onto something here, because I would feel alive when I would be, you know, in the lab formulating. I would feel absolutely alive with, you know, dreaming up. And I would literally, you know, dream about it. I would wake up thinking about it, about, you know, what if I formulated a few of these different ingredients together? I wonder what I could achieve for my skin. What could I achieve for my, you know, for a natural deodorant, or for my body, or to tackle dryness? And the more I got into it, the more I realized that this was definitely an area of passion for me, because it ticked all my boxes. So remember, at the time, I was probably at my most extreme state of wanting to be, you know, the most clean, the most natural, and the healthiest I could possibly be. So, you know, for me at the time, for me to be able to formulate my own meant that I also didn't have to worry about other products that I was using and having to control what ingredients were in other products. So originally, it probably started off in a little bit of a selfish way, and for me to be able to prepare products that my own daughters could use that I knew weren't putting any chemicals on their bodies. But then I realized I was onto something, because it was in 2014, right at the time when the natural deodorant market was starting to explode. And so I realized I was really onto something, and that was where the world was going, that people were waking up and being educated around using toxins on their body. So while it started out a little bit self-serving, in that I was ticking the boxes for myself, I realized I could also, you know, solve so many issues for other women and mothers, and, you know, just women in general that wanted clean beauty alternatives. So that's how CleanKiss was born. I actually went back to school. I became an organic skincare formulator, and really loved that process, and really loved understanding how to formulate beautiful, botanical, natural products that were small batch made, and they still are. So to this day, all of my products are made in small batches, and I'm still involved in the formulation. And I absolutely love doing what I do. But it became clear to me at the same point that my life was going through this turning point in 2019. It became clear to me that my brand ethos could not be about what so many skincare brands are about, which is making women feel bad about their skin in order to sell products. So I realized that I started this brand and I was selling my products to women, but it suddenly dawned on me, what if I'm part of the problem? What if I am sending messages to women in society that you have to use this product in order to turn back the clock, in order to look more youthful? And that's when the light went on for me, not only in my personal journey with my, you know, my own struggles with orthorexia, but also that I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. And I actually want to give women the empowerment that they need in order to feel beautiful in their skin, no matter what their age is. And no matter, you know, what their body image is or their body size is. You can be beautiful at every size, every age, you know, every color that we all come in. We can all be beautiful. And there's space for us in beauty for all of us. So I don't want to be the brand that, you know, or have the brand messaging that so many brands have around, you know, subliminally making you feel bad in order to sell more products.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely is something that really sets your brand apart. And when you you, as you put it that way and say, you know, how a lot of brands really do kind of thrive and get your attention by making you feel bad about the state your skin might be in right now, and that saying that, you know, you should change that. I mean, I don't think I ever really thought about it that way, that's what the messaging was doing, but it's true. That's really the hook for a lot of brands. So, I can really appreciate you changing the messaging there and not wanting to really be part of that problem that creates the sense of insecurity that a lot of us feel when we maybe aren't meeting, you know, what society has deemed to be this kind of standard of beauty that we should all be aiming for.
Right.
Was there a moment for you when, I know you talked about kind of the DIY side of things and then going back to school and really learning how to actually create these formulations. Was there a moment for you where you realized, you know, like I have something here that I think that other people need to know about?
Absolutely. And I feel like almost like every day, I feel like there's a layer of the onion that's being peeled away. And I feel like through this pandemic, it has actually been even clearer for me as the brand founder of Clean Kiss that this is what I want to stand for. Because I believe that this has been a time of awakening for so many women, so many people in general, but I'd like to use women as the example where, you know, for one, I celebrate days where I can just have a bare face and be, you know, without makeup and just be myself, even if I have to get on Zoom. You know, I feel like I want to set an example that I know I can show up and I can be, you know, makeup free Monday or, you know, makeup free every day and no filter, and I can just show up. And I feel like I have now more of that confidence and inspiration to do that. And I'm not sure exactly what it was about what we've all been through collectively through this pandemic. Although I believe in my heart, it's something about, you know, really understanding what is the most important to us. And again, back to that whole mind-body connection, I feel a new connection with myself, having had the time to slow down and reflect on my own life and reflect on what's been happening globally. And I feel like priorities have shifted, right? And so now more than ever, we need to be celebrating who we are. Like, celebrate your health, celebrate your being in all of its existence, because so many people don't have that opportunity, right? And so there's been so much grieving and so much loss through this pandemic that has all made us all reevaluate why we're here and what we're here for. And, you know, when I share this message with women, that is probably where I get the most energy to keep sharing this message, because I see the reaction I get from other women. I see the reaction, even with my own children, to the messages that I'm sharing. And, you know, I go live a lot now on Instagram, for example, where I'll just go on and I've got absolutely no makeup on. And so it's, you know, it's one thing to do it on Zoom when you're on with just, you know, a small group of people or one-on-one. But I've now actually worked up the courage to go live on Instagram and actually just, you know, do a 5 or 10 minute video with absolutely no makeup on, you know, just coming from, you know, an exercise class or something, where I have this inspiration of something motivational that I want to share with other women in this whole pro-aging movement that I'm on.
We've covered, I think, some really important topics today. And I feel like I can really divide the interview almost into these 3 main turning points. So discovering you had PCOS, learning of your daughter's genetic condition, and also then your realization that your wellness journey wasn't healthy anymore. And, you know, these were all really difficult moments. But you turned them into something to learn from, something positive, something to help others. So what advice do you have for others to turn these kinds of challenges into something positive and an opportunity the way you have?
You know, Priya, I would actually say that sometimes when you're presented with these challenges, you don't realize at the exact moment how significant of a turning point this is going to be in your life. And so my advice is, based on my life experience, and as you've said, these 3 significant turning points in my life, I almost envision them like, climbing uphill and then hitting the peak and then, going down, hitting that rock bottom where you don't realize that that's your turning point in the moment. You just think you've been dealt, a rotten hand, or you've been dealt some rotten luck. And, it's easy to get resentful in that space. And I would say to people, wait for the lesson. Just, sit in that moment. It might be an hour, it might be a day, a week, a month, a year. You don't know when you're in the moment, but sit in that moment and wait for the spark. Wait for that opportunity to present itself, but watch for the signs. And sometimes we can be oblivious to those signs, right? Like it took me the PCOS one, and obviously with my daughter, those were pretty time sensitive things that happened in my life. But this 3rd turning point, I had to hit really that bottom, and I had to be kind of, clobbered over the head by, my own experiences, by my own guilt and shame about, my own body issues and my own struggles with aging. I had to be clobbering myself, as well as, from close friends around me who had to give me that wake up call. And you can either take that moment and you can shove it down and you could say, no, this isn't happening, or this is rotten luck, and why me? Why do I have PCOS? Why is my daughter born with this condition? Or you can say, okay, I'm going to grieve this. I'm going to sit in this. Maybe I'll be angry, but I'm not going to let this last, because I'm not going to let that define me. And then you can turn that into an opportunity when something feels right. And you won't instantly know what that opportunity is, right? And I think that's the beauty of life, is everything is impermanent, and every moment, every pain and suffering moment that you're in, or every moment of joy that you're in, is impermanent. And you don't know what is right around the corner. So if you take that moment of pain or that moment of joy and you just accept it for what it is and be ready for that next moment to present itself, that's kind of how I live my life, right? As you can see from the stories I've shared.
Yes. And I think that's such great advice. And you're so right that oftentimes kind of in the moment, you don't realize how significant an event is. And it does take time. So I thank you so much for sharing your stories today, for sharing your wisdom and experience. It was such a pleasure talking to you and having you as a guest on Turning Point.
Oh, thank you, Priya. The pleasure has been all mine. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you. And for all of you listening and watching, you can learn more about Jodie and her skincare line, Clean Kiss, on their website. That is cleankisslifestyle.com. You can also follow along on Facebook and Instagram. Their handle is @CleanKissLifestyle. Thank you so much for listening and watching to this episode. You, of course, can subscribe to Turning Point on YouTube to get notified about the latest episodes. You can follow us on your favorite podcast app. And hey, if you or someone you know has a Turning Point story that you'd like to share, please send us an email. You can reach us at turningpoint@priyasam.com. Until next time, take good care of yourself and of each other.